Hello and welcome to Saturday Morning Cartoons, the weekly podcast that revisits, reviews, and ridicules some of the world's weirdest animated series. Coming to you from the muddy bottom of an open grave. I'll be your host, Dave Drumbore. Joining me as always, our co-host and resident Cryptkeeper, Sean Paul Ellis. How's it going there, buddy?
David, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I could use a hand up out of this rotten old grave, Mr.
You
Cryptkeeper.
could use a hand. How about two?
You doing okay over there? You gonna be able to do that the entire time?
I can't. I'm laughing so hard. I'm cracking myself up. This does not happen very often. I'm
I think Sean's found his spirit animal in the Cryptkeeper.
Oh, he is the best.
A Cryptkeeper lives inside all of us, whether you know it or not, waiting to burst out through your fleshy skin. No, we're going to be talking about, believe it or not, the animated series Tales from the Cryptkeeper. I did not know that they took the HBO live-action horror anthology show and turned it into a show for kids, a cartoon for kids. Thanks, CBS Saturday Morning Cartoons.
Oh boy.
Now, this is the one that you found out because you were researching the CBS Morning Cartoon block, right?
Right. Correct.
And yeah, it's just bizarre. I had no. We've watched some weird cartoons that when you look at them all together, you're like, how the hell this form a cartoon blog for kids on Saturday mornings? It's some of the weirdest stuff. We had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles a couple of weeks ago. We just had the animated version of Ace Ventura. Yeah, and now Cryptkeeper because of course. Because
why not?
Of course.
You know, you look at all of these. All of this intellectual property that came out in the 90s, things that had either been movies or had been stories and comic books in the 80s for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Sure.
And these things had a following that they hoped to bring to a younger audience through the vehicle of a cartoon. And it's very interesting to watch this CBS Saturday Morning Cartoon block and say, was it actually successful?
Or what? Yeah, was this a good idea? Are you sure? Did you think this through?
Who got business drunk and was like, let's make some real serious money decisions right now?
Apparently it was Morgan Creek and Nelvana. Those two companies probably got together and were like, yeah, kids cartoon, super simple.
I mean, in some cases I get it, and in some cases I really have no idea.
Look, I mean, if you've got a property and it's doing pretty well, because as we'll talk about tonight, the live action Cryptkeeper, Tales from the Crypt, was actually running at the same time as this cartoon. So at least it was happening kind of hand in hand. It wasn't years after the fact, or it wasn't like a quick cash grab, or it was just extra. And you still see that with production companies today. If they own a piece of IP, they will pump it out through every channel that they have. Every channel that they have, whether that's toys, now mobile apps, video games, movies, TV shows, cartoons, comic books, whatever. Any branch of merchandising that's available to them, they will take it and run with it if they've got the capital to do so. So it makes sense. And I think some versions are better than others. This one for me was actually kind of surprising how decent it was. It wasn't the worst thing we've ever seen, which is
okay.
Nice.
We're oddly, because we did not discuss our feelings or opinions before the show.
Right. I didn't know where Sean was landing on this one.
We are on the same page.
Okay,
with
cool.
This.
That's cool.
This was surprisingly okay.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about kind of the tone they were going for and how, what worked and what didn't, because it wasn't a straight up horror. It wasn't for an older generation or even older kids. It was a funny kind of cartoon with some not scary moments, but a little more creature effects and, some little PSAs thrown in here and there. But getting ahead of ourselves, Sean has a brief history of the show that we're gonna talk about tonight.
Sure. Tales from the Cryptkeeper was a children's animated series made by Nelvana Limited that ran on ABC and later CBS for 39 episodes over 3 seasons. Now, the 3 seasons is important because the first 2 seasons ran between 1993 to 94 and then took a 5-year hiatus because in 1999 somebody felt the need to reboot this with the new Tales from the Cryptkeeper.
He's just been rotting in a grave for those 5 years and just getting more and more decrepit. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Did we just jinx that?
We jinxed it. Sorry, that's it. We can't talk for the rest of the podcast. You're just going to be listening to 59 minutes of silent air of us breathing. But if you're not familiar with Tales from the Crypt, which is a live-action HBO show, that was, like I said, live action. It was a horror anthology. every probably like Sunday night. I don't even remember when it was. I used to watch this with my dad, which I'll get into in a little bit. But the host of it was this creepy ass puppet character called the Cryptkeeper, and he looked like an actual like corpse that you had dug up from the ground. Like there wasn't much
Yes.
flesh left on him. He was very skeletal. One eye was kind of bulging out more than the other. His hair was like white and stringy. You could like see through patches of his skin on his face, and he was a creepy looking dude. And he had that incredible laugh that Sean did a very good approximation of earlier. You can rewind it and listen to that again if you'd like.
You are way too kind.
He'll do it again later on in the show, I'm sure, whether I ask him to or not. No, it was really good. I can't do that. And the cool thing is we got the guy that did the Cryptkeeper to actually step in and do the Cryptkeeper for the cartoon as well, which is pretty cool. So this cartoon was based on that live action horror anthology show, and they actually aired at the same time. But that was on HBO. So the cartoon, which aired, Saturday morning cartoons on network TV, either ABC or CBS, significantly milder than that version, and all the blood and gore were just completely removed in order to focus on these younger audiences, which makes sense. I think that's kind of a no-brainer. This wasn't like, we weren't watching like MTV's Liquid Television or anything like that. It was definitely a Saturday morning cartoon crowd.
Right.
So a couple questions. Did you watch the live action version?
I had similar memories in the fact that you had watched it with your father. I watched it with mine as well.
It's weird that we didn't watch it with our moms. I feel like it's not a mom show.
I feel like this is absolutely not a mom show if you were watching it on HBO. And it came on so late at night that when I was with my dad and he was dad weekend warrioring it, he would be like, do you want to stay up to midnight and watch Tales from the Crypt? And I think I was 11 or 12.
Yeah, probably around that time. Yeah.
At the time, and I was like, shit, yeah, I want to stay up till midnight and watch the show, because it had been like nothing I'd ever seen on television before.
No, it wasn't. Yeah.
This sort of non sequitur from episode to episode.
Right.
Horror.
Yeah, because it was like segments, right? Weren't they like segments within the show itself? Yeah.
Yeah, and so I really had no idea sort of what to expect, and and I will say this, for a lot of like young horror filmmakers who were kind of coming up and doing a lot of things that gave them the opportunity to sort of showcase potentially some skills that they had.
Definitely.
Whether it was through direction or writing, it was an opportunity, and it felt like it was a vehicle to kind of promote people who wanted to do that type of work.
Right.
And it still remains, I mean, horror and like sci-fi horror still remains one of my favorite genres of things to kind of get into and watch. And I feel like the 90s with Tales from the Crypt had a significant impact on people in that industry that wanted to do that. And I kind of feel thankful for that.
Yeah, definitely. And honestly, I love all these anthology shows. So whether you grew up watching like the classic Twilight Zone or Outer Limits, which was a similar thing, or if you watched, Are You Afraid of the Dark? If you watch, the other one just escaped me. There was another one that was similar. But then definitely Tales from the Crypt. I mean, that was more of like the horror angle and less the sci-fi. And this was like a fairly good, gory adult horror too. I remember as I was watching it with my dad, like as soon as it would end, he'd have to be like, all right, time for bed. Got to get out of here. Time for bed. Because that's when like the softcore porn stuff would start on like late night HBO before it like shifted over to Cinemax and stuff like that. So like if you just delay it a couple seconds longer, you might see like a boob or something here or there, which was pretty good as like 11 or 12-year-old me. But no, my funny story from this, I don't remember a whole lot of the episodes. I remember the Cryptkeeper. You know what I mean? Like the Cryptkeeper was the thing that I remembered. I couldn't tell you a story that actually showed up on Tales from the Crypt, but I could tell you a bunch of stuff about the Cryptkeeper and like the weird get-ups that he'd wear. I remember him wearing like a Hawaiian shirt with like a lei on, and he had like a old-fashioned like Polaroid camera at one point. But the funniest thing, and this maybe was just funny for me, my dad used to call the Cryptkeeper Tito. He used to call him Tito. He said, this guy looks like Tito. I was like, what are you talking about? Apparently he worked with a guy named Tito at work who says he looked like the Cryptkeeper. So first of all, I've never met this real life person that my dad says looks like the Cryptkeeper, but I grew up thinking the Cryptkeeper's name was Tito. So people looked at me like Sean's looking at me right now, like, okay, you call him Tito? That's pretty fucking weird. But yeah, to me, he'll always be Tito.
Wow.
The Cryptkeeper.
I just thought of, there was one other horror anthology live action show that was going on It actually probably ended right before this show. It was from 1988 to 91. It was called Monsters.
I don't think I've ever
And
heard of that.
it was a really weird. It didn't feel like it was a children's TV show, but there were just a lot of really kind of similarities to the Tales from the Crypt. But it was not on a premium channel, so I could watch it very easily.
Oh.
And it came on television very regularly, and so I was able to watch a lot of that. So I think that sort of peppered a lot of my views, so that when I was with my dad and he was like, "Do you want to watch Tales from the Crypt?" I was very curious and intrigued to get into such an interesting anthology series.
Yeah.
I will say this: I do remember one really, really weird episode that I watched with my dad, which was about people trying to understand like when the soul leaves the body, and sort of some guy who was attempting to figure out when the soul leaves the body and trying to capture that like unquantifiable mass of a soul in order to better understand it. And he was doing that by killing people.
Oh, that makes sense.
In these like very gruesome fashions. And so, but he was doing it sort of like weirdly torturous, where he was doing it very slowly in order to understand like how the soul was coming out. That was like you said that you couldn't remember any episodes. That was like the one that has sort of like stuck in my head for a very long time.
Well, interesting little known fact about that particular episode: it served as the basis for the Death Cab for Cutie song "When Soul Meets Body." It's pretty interesting that you brought that one up.
I walked right into that.
It's fine. I was sitting here just like thinking, like, what the fuck's the name of that band?
The crazy thing is that Ben Gibbard listens to this show because he messaged me the other night.
Yeah.
And he was just like, please never mention my band name.
And it's ties to the Cryptkeeper.
On the show. He's like, we did a lot with sort of like borrowing and taking some artistic license. And I was like, fair enough.
But
really
Sean
sorry.
didn't pass a message
really sorry,
to me,
Ben.
so that's on me. So sorry, Ben.
Don't know what to do.
Just go set a grapevine on fire. Anyway, no, I don't remember any of the actual episodes, but it's weird because I can sit here and remember like watching the marathons of like Twilight Zone or Are You Afraid of the Dark or X-Files and stuff when it was more of an anthology show, rather than a serial. So like, I'm assuming maybe the episodes weren't great. Can't really remember them, or maybe it's just because we were younger. I have no idea. But the one thing that kind of parallels between the live action show and the cartoon show is similarities in the theme song. They actually did a pretty good job of kind of like cartoonizing the theme song and bringing it into the cartoon. And then their intro was it was pretty interesting. I thought it was interesting, but what was your take on it?
Oh, I thought it was fun. It was sort of that same like dun 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 that is synonymous with the live action version of Tales from the Crypt Keeper. The only difference is that in this cartoon version of it, at least for the first season, we sort of had a monster montage as a kid is riding his bike towards a haunted house.
Yeah.
Which, first and foremost, a kid riding his bike towards the haunted house?
Mm-hmm.
That sort of seems like he's rushing into danger in those moments.
Which is what I want to watch.
Yeah, so there's this...
Good for you, kid.
Good for you for being somebody of a stronger moral constitution than I was at that age. With a cooler bike. So he is barreling towards this house, and as he's in motion, bats are swirling around him. These gargoyles are waking up and coming to life. This Frankenstein's monster is getting electrocuted in the basement, and he rushes in through the house past all of these monsters. He doesn't really seem to pay them a second thought, and then he finds on that I don't know why there has to be that bookcase with sort of that
because it's so cool, man.
It is. Who has not been in a house or in an apartment and thought to themselves, I would really love to just put like a sliding bookcase right here.
Every once in a while, I go to my actual just bookcase, which is I can see the wall behind it, and I just pull it out just in case. Maybe the landlord came in, put a rotating doorway in there, but no, he never does. He never
just
did.
Looking for that Narnia.
Yeah,
but he creeps past all these monsters. without any problem. And then
Oh, they're chasing him though, so we should mention that.
Right.
Like he's flying by him again towards
Yeah.
danger, but they're all chasing him. And it looks pretty like he keeps looking over his shoulder like, "Oh, he's going to get me." So you're not sure quite what's going on, and this theme song is still playing the whole time. So it's a fun kind of ride. But yeah, go ahead.
But he gets to that basement,
Right.
and there's a chair that's sitting in front of the fire,
Mhm.
and it's just the Crypt Keeper who kind of looks back at him very suddenly, like, "Hey, how's it going?" And he has a reaction where he's suddenly in that moment frightened at what he's been doing. And kid, your trajectory has been running towards death.
Mhm.
What
Literal,
the fuck did you
like,
think?
a
What did you
literal
think
death.
was gonna happen? Which is amazing. So, and in that moment, all of the monsters finally catch up with him.
Yep.
And
He's trapped.
instead
He's
of-
cornered.
he's cornered. And then they put their hands sort of menacingly. You see these paws on this kid's shoulder, and they push him down. And you're like, "Oh no!"
Oh no, kid's about to
And
get
they-
eaten.
Push him down into a seated position on a couch.
A super
and then
comfy couch. Like super
and then
comfy.
sit down next to him on this super comfy couch with some popcorn.
Yeah.
And they're just like, "We're ready to watch this thing." And you're like,
Yeah.
"Okay."
It was pretty great.
Cool.
It was pretty great.
And
I
then
actually
there's
really
that,
enjoyed that.
Yeah, and then there's that infamous like cackle,
Mm-hmm.
from the Crypt Keeper, and it segues into the show.
I thought it was really fun. I mean, honestly, in the live action, I remember the lead up to the Crypt Keeper himself because it was like this low angle shot. Think like Sam Raimi's like Evil Dead,
Yeah.
early days of him, like low angle shot, the camera kind of creeping along the ground in like the misty cemetery kind of thing, and then like it looks up and you see this dilapidated haunted house at night, and you just kind of like creep through the house and bust through these like creaking doors and past all this creepy stuff on the walls, and then you get down into the basement where the Crypt Keeper is, and then he turns around and gives that screech. So it was that same kind of like spirit, but definitely for kids, because it was like, if we scared you by this introduction, once you get to hang out with these Universal monsters, you just hang out. Like, it's totally cool. We're just gonna have monster popcorn. We're gonna look at this rotten corpse, and he's gonna tell us a story. Everything's totally fine.
We rounded up every single monster that we could find
Yep.
from the movie Monster Squad.
That's right.
And we invited them all down.
And we didn't pay any licensing fees, so you can't call them by name, but here they are.
Exactly.
That's pretty good. Now let's talk about the Crypt Keeper for a second, because he's really like the linchpin of this show. How would you describe his appearance versus or just in general? How would you describe his appearance?
So we talked about the whole idea of his appearance in the live action show,
Right.
and just sort of how decrepit and almost transparent and obscure a lot of his features and his skin is.
Which you could do because
Um,
it was a practical creation. It was a
Right,
puppet,
exactly.
basically.
And I loved that. I loved that this was, during the point where we were not doing things that were so CG heavy. And that moment where the Crypt Keeper in the live action would kind of burst out of his coffin.
Right.
Was always sort of like a, like a,
A little jolt.
yeah.
Yeah.
You kind of had that moment where you're like, oh God, okay. Whew,
Yeah, because
knew
he was
there.
creepy looking mother. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's leaping from this coffin at the beginning of the show with that cackle. It's like there's no you don't know when the coffin opens and when the cackle begins, but they are all happening together.
Mhm.
And you're like, "Ooh, okay, I'm cool. I'm ready. I'm in the show.
That's
Let's
right.
do this."
Let's do it.
So with this, because they're given the artistic license of creating him for an animated show,
Sure.
he has the ability to be a little bit more mobile.
A lot more mobile.
A lot more mobile. So let's put it this way. He's pretty good. Like
He
he's looking
he looks like, if this was in the same universe as the live action show, it looks probably a good 20 years earlier, before
He's
the
looking-
rotten decay has kind of set in.
he's looking real svelte,
Mm-hmm.
taking real good care of what he's got left.
Mhm.
And let's be honest, you gotta take care of what you got during the time that you're around, and even after the fact. He's looking pretty trim, looking pretty fit.
Now, I mean, there's nothing to say, like, he's the Crypt Keeper, right? There's nothing to say that he's dead. There's nothing to say that he was a corpse and just happened to be like, he's almost like a grave digger or like a caretaker at this point,
Sure.
anyway.
I mean, there's nothing to say that he's dead other than the fact that he's missing a majority of his throat,
Mm-hmm.
a majority of his mouth,
Right.
and his face, and part of his head. But
And probably
still,
internal organs and
sure,
the blood supply,
they could
which would
potentially be
explain his
exposed.
color. His color's not great in either version.
Looking real jaundiced.
It's more like a bluish kind of green, like that kind of mottled corpse bloat color.
He's looking.
You know that
double
Crayola
jaundiced.
crayon mottled corpse bloat? That's the
Oh
color
yeah,
he looks like that you give to
because
kids.
every kid was like burnt sienna,
Mm-hmm.
corpse bloat.
Corpse bloat. I want corpse bloat. I want to make a corpse bloat sky. Well,
Oh boy.
we're going to get you professional help, but you go ahead and do what you got to do, said my mom. So, yeah, he's a little different than the live action version, but so it wasn't like terrifying for kids, but he was also kind of like a weird looking dude. He looked like your grandfather if you like put him in a suit that was too big, and he was also maybe dead. But other than that, I don't think it was super scary.
So it's like Weekend at Bernie's.
It's like Weekend at Bernie's, but with a Crypt Keeper that tells you stories.
If they had like left him outside for like a week.
Right. Yes. He definitely had a little bit of like a fluid buildup thing going on.
Oh God.
Yeah. For kids.
Oh boy.
But it wasn't gross. He just looked unnatural.
No.
I'd say unnatural is probably the kindest way to describe him.
Sure.
Which is pretty good because, I mean, when we see him at the outset of this first episode we'll talk about, he's actually like literally in a jogging suit on a treadmill. So,
yeah. Was it a treadmill?
No,
though?
it wasn't a treadmill. I wanted to save the puns. I saved the puns as long as I could.
Or did they add
so much puns?
This is my favorite part because if you've ever watched the live action, they do a great job of doing sort of these non sequitur intros with the Crypt Keeper into each episode, right. And I love the fact that they preserved that for the cartoon
with embalming fluid. Yes,
exactly.
Yep.
And so they kept those sort of intros to the episodes to sort of do a little bit of setup and let you know exactly what was going on and potentially introduce some characters. So I think that based on the anthology of the show, does a great job of sort of leaning people into what's actually about to happen.
Right.
And so these intros are riddled with just nothing but dad jokes.
It's literally every line. I'm not exaggerating when I say that it's every line of dialogue, which is fun. It actually works pretty well because like once you get into it, it either drives you away instantly and you're irritated by it to no end, or you're like, okay, this is kind of endearing and just like really silly, but it's fun.
I hate the fact that as I'm watching it the first time, I was kind of cursing at the TV when these came up, and I was like, oh, like it was nothing but eye rolls.
Yeah.
So I wrote them down.
I stopped because I wrote the first one down, and then I just said lots of puns, and I did not write anymore.
I wrote most of them down.
Oh boy.
And as I was sort of rereading my notes and going through everything for tonight, I started laughing at them, just being like, these are the worst.
They're really bad.
These are the worst.
And out of context, it's like, wait, what? Why are you speaking so weird? Because he's saying the same stuff mostly. It's just like a little inflection here or there.
But like we've watched some other like horror cartoons before, and those have not been great.
No.
And so this sort of seemed like it was, I don't want to say redemption in any way, shape, or form, but I mean, this felt like it was
a more successful attempt, I'd say.
At least there was cohesion, and it felt like there was thought. Grooving Ghoulies.
Oh, don't remind me, man.
Yeah, I know.
There were no musical interludes in these episodes, thank God.
God. And so, there were a lot of things that this had, that it really felt like they went above and beyond to kind of give you that cohesive narrative and also introduce you to the episode. And I think that shows the success of the show. I mean, they felt the need to bring this back after a 5-year hiatus for some reason.
Right.
And that feels unheard of, for 5 years to go off the air.
Yeah, it's pretty unusual.
That feels pretty incredible. And so, to be able to do that and get away with it with dad jokes, that I don't know, that baffles my mind.
I think it works because it's only for like a brief. He's only got like a 30-45 second intro to these episodes, and that's about it. You don't spend a whole lot of time with him. You get the intro and you get the outro. That's it.
Right.
So I think if you like condense them in enough and you know that it's part of his character, that it's fine. It works.
Yeah.
Because nobody else really does it. So it's not like you're just getting them constantly. It's not the backbone to the entire series. So I think that works pretty well.
I'm very curious if anybody's listening to this and they have not watched the live action, and you guys go back and actually check this cartoon out. I'd be very curious to get your reaction to seeing this for the first time with some of these jokes, not having the exposure to something that was sort of a cult HBO phenomenon in the 90s, that ended up as a cartoon during the same time. And so the live action intro was always pun heavy, but it was supposed to be a little bit more, I want to say, ghoulish.
Yeah, it was a little more adult too. So they could get away
Right.
with a lot more. These are more just like easy dad jokes. And if you take Sean's advice and go back and check out the cartoons, we are going to suggest maybe 2 episodes you'd like to start with. And there's the 2 we're going to talk about tonight. They're the highest rated ones on IMDb so far.
Right.
And so far, it's not like they're making new ones. It's just the highest rated ones on IMDb.
I won't be surprised if in 2017, if they bring this show back to
I'd
like,
be
guys,
fine with that.
5-year hiatus, and now, we brought it
math.
back in 99, it's 17, 18-year hiatus.
That's right. Coming to Comic-Con 2017. Probably not. Voiced by Sean and myself. Saturday Morning Cartoons production. Hey, you never know.
If you're listening to this and you are actually working on this, please let me know. I would love to audition for the role for Cryptkeeper.
Sure.
Such a great part.
I'll do all the creaking doors and like weird shuffling footsteps. I'll just be Foley Man. No, if you want to check out some episodes, we watched season 1, episode 8 called Hide and Go Shriek, which we'll talk about first. Now I say hide weirdly because it's spelled with a Y, which will make sense in a little bit. And we also watched season 2, episode 8, Growing Pains. Both of these have a common theme in that they focus on a nerdy character named Wendell, and they're also the highest rated on IMDb. So I don't know if it's Wendell power or they just happen to like these particular episodes, or if they really just like watching or seeing scenes of the 2 Twin Towers in New York City over and over and over again. Can we talk about that for a second so I can get that out of the way?
Yeah, let's get into that.
This one after the intro, so we're talking Hide and Go Shriek. After the intro, they make it very obvious that we're in New York City, and then very obvious again that we're in a suburb of New York City, just outside the city itself, because they just show the 2 towers. They show the Twin Towers standing there, World Trade Centers, obviously, years, almost a decade before they went down. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. We're in New York City. It's an iconic building. Not a big deal. You see them in these 2 episodes alone, you see them about 6 times.
They bring them up frequently.
It's 6 times because I made a note every time it happened, and it's just
no.
it's one of their only establishing shots. It's like, look, establishing shot 101. If you start big, start wide, like America, okay, and then you focus in. Okay, now we're in New York City, like that's fine, and then you focus in, and you're like in Hell's Kitchen. Okay, we're good. Everybody knows where we're taking place. You don't need to keep re-establishing that we're in New York City. I don't think at the time it would have been a big deal, but now it was just like, every time with this cartoon Twin Towers. Yeah. But other than that, animation-wise, there wasn't anything too wonky except a couple of missing eyes here and there.
Yeah.
That was a little disturbing.
I was wondering if the hide and go shriek was the fact that some of the animators missed certain keyframes that were in here. And so the idea was that they were hiding where those keyframes were located, and so you're supposed to be kind of freaked out. It felt glitchy on the same level that if you're playing a video game and then you sort of go in that third person perspective and you rotate around and then a character just kind of like completely like wipes their face out and you sort of see like just the
jagged polygons of
like behind it, and you're like, should not have been playing Fallout 4 this long.
Nope.
And it just, some of it gets a little bit weird, but it's thankfully it doesn't happen too often.
No, these are minor things too. It's just stuff that caught our attention. Like I sent a screen cap to Sean. There's a moment where one of the characters is like falling down, and as he falls backwards, there's a frame, a single solitary frame, where his eyes, they forgot to like color them in white, so his eyes just go black, and he looks like his soul's being sucked out of his face. It's so disturbing out of context. But in the show itself, it wasn't too bad. It just caught my attention because it happened that fast.
I think it's also hard too because we've watched now so many cartoons that like when we watch these things, even if we really enjoy something, there's a part of us that's like we want to get critical. We want to find not something that we don't like, but we want to find something that maybe we missed or something that we, as a kid when we were watching it, that we didn't see on the first pass.
Right.
So
more of a critical and analytical eye. Yeah.
Oh, when we find these things, it's just it's a little bit upsetting, but it's also passable too.
Look, I mean, there's one thing if you like aren't coloring in a background, you're just using like a solid color as a background as a way to like save money. That's cheap, but it's fine. It's whatever.
Yeah.
When you like miss
you're
an
lazy,
eye,
I am too.
When you have a lazy eye, that's like not intentional. You didn't mean to do that. It's just like this weird side effect thing that's just like super creepy. This is the creepiest part of the whole episode, to be honest with you.
I really think that sometimes when they do lazy eyes, I'm like, they're trying to relate because like everybody grew up with a kid with that had a friend that had a lazy eye, and you're like, this isn't too weird out of the norm. Like it happens all the time. Don't look at it like it's some oddity. Your friend probably has it, so just be chill about it.
Just tell him to draw his pupil in the center next time, and he'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, where do you want to start with this one? Do you want to start with the Crypt Keeper's intro since you wrote down a lot of his puns, or do you want to dive into Wendell's story?
I almost want to say that these dad puns, if you watch the show, if you enjoyed the live action and you want to get into this, I almost want to say the dad puns for sort of your eye rolls and your groans, because it's going to happen in every episode, whether you want it to happen or not, so it can get there. So let's get right into the episode.
Okay.
Because this is all about Wendell right now. This is a Wendell dance party.
And where does it take place in again?
New York City.
Oh, that's right, because of the 6 establishing shots. Right.
Yeah, exactly. You really got to get that.
So Wendell's like a high school kid. He's nerdy. He's kind of underdeveloped, but he's a go-getter. He really wants to play football with his friends out there, hanging around playing ball on the field, but doesn't work out too well. Yeah.
And let's be honest. He's doing everything that he can to fit in.
Everything he can,
given the circumstances and his place in life.
Let's also describe Wendell briefly. How would you if I said nerd, and if I said nerd stereotype of like the mid 90s, what are the first couple things that come to mind? We'll see if we can check the boxes if they apply to Wendell.
Glasses.
Check.
A love of science and maybe the arts.
Check. And like visual descriptions, if there's anything that comes to mind.
Like
a pocket protector, maybe.
Oh, pocket protector. Check.
Yeah.
I would say maybe an understanding, but not a full grasp of sports.
Check. Maybe an inability to lift heavy objects.
That check.
Super check.
Check.
So Wendell literally checks the boxes of all things nerdery in the mid 90s. And for the most part, these other kids aren't that different from Wendell. They're just kind of like normal kids with like normal builds, except for one particular musclehead by the name of Rex Rivas, who this kid looks like. If everybody knew a kid with a lazy eye in school, everybody knew at least one kid who was just like, he developed like way too soon and weighed like 285 pounds of like solid muscle when he was like 12. Which is always weird to me. That's this kid.
Yeah. I had a friend growing up like that.
Yeah.
Who unfortunately had a stutter.
Oh.
And I felt very bad because he would stutter and I would kind of point it out.
Right.
And then he would punch me a lot.
Well.
And then we got off the bus at the same bus stop. And as we were walking to our respective homes, he would just be like, hey, you want to come over and play video games? I'd be like, yeah, absolutely. It was one of those things where, he was working on it and he was getting better. And so I think there were moments or times that he appreciated being called out for it.
Sure, so he knew what was happening.
He wanted to know, and like he was actively working on it the entire time. And I knew that I was pointing it out and I was being a dick. And rightfully so, I got punched a couple times for it. And I didn't have a problem with that. Because, we got off the bus and like 5 seconds later we were playing Twisted Metal on PlayStation and everybody was cool.
Well, and because that's how like normal stuff works. What is abnormal in this episode is that these kids keep picking. It's mostly this Rex kid. This Rex kid keeps picking on Wendell. They tease him during the football game. They basically make him drop his shorts and somehow crash into like a fruit vending stand, which was bizarre.
It was very.
It's pretty exaggerated, but that's okay.
Like that was a long shot.
As Wendell ran, honestly, Wendell might be a closet athlete because he ran probably 150 yards to cross that street and dive directly into the fruit stand. But they didn't like make amends here. Wendell actually is the bigger character, so he always says like, "Oh, that's funny, guys. You really got me." Like he plays off the joke. He makes it seem like it doesn't really bother him, and that's fine. And most of the other kids recognized it. They're like, "Oh, he's a good sport."
Now, what grade would you place these guys in? Are they middle school or are they high school?
I mean, they were in high school in the second episode, and that was only a season later. So at most, they have to be junior high, if not high school.
Okay.
So maybe 13, 14 to 15.
Because they had this moment where, as everybody everybody went through this, I feel like, in the 80s and the 90s, where you suddenly transition to the gym class where you have to change your clothes to get ready.
Especially
and
when
I
swim, it comes time to
oh
swim.
God, I hated those. And you had these moments where, everybody felt uncomfortable. You had an authority figure that was sort of walking around policing everything that was happening at that time, and you were just like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do these things.
Right.
And Wendell, for everything that has been thrown at him, literally, including a football and just all of this crap that he has gotten from this group, which we should say is composed of Rex, and we have Chet and Louie.
And Chet and Louie will show up again later, but they're kind of like the main, not really antagonists in this one so much, but Rex definitely is.
Right. So
they're more like pranksters.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we have this moment where all of a sudden there has been a prank that has been played on Wendell, where they've opened up his locker when he's been at gym, and they sort of like they tied knots in all of his clothing.
Yeah, which at first, like when they first open his locker, you just see all these like strips of cloth and rags like tied, but it looked like a Wicker Man or some sort of like weird voodoo ritual. I was like, what the fuck is about to happen? No,
I
it's
thought
just
they were
his
gonna
clothes
burn him
and
in
his towels.
effigy for like 2 seconds. I was like,
I thought they were just gonna burn him alive, man. But
didn't know what it was.
No.
But Coach or Mr. Hupka, he comes out and asks them. He's like, "What's going on?" And he kind of looks at Rex because he knows he's a bully. And knows that he would do something like this.
So this is like the opposite of every trope gym teacher, because he actually knows what's happening and he stands up for the kid who's getting bullied, which never happens in the movies.
And actually says to Wendell, he goes, you're too nice for your own good.
And then he says to Rex, I thought I told you to lay off this kid.
Yeah.
And then he actually gets all the other kids in the locker room to throw their dirty, stinking towels on Rex because he's hiding in the laundry basket. So I thought that was pretty funny. But that backfires on Wendell because, like Louie and Chet, they're like, all right, Wendell's okay. He can take a joke. But Rex is like, no, man, I'm going to fuck this kid up. And he doesn't really say that because it's a kid's show. But basically, you get the intent that he's not satisfied until he basically ruins Wendell. So this is like a little sociopath here.
Right.
Yeah.
So we get to the moment that I called, well, this is how school shootings start.
Yikes.
Which is, we have Wendell in a classroom demonstrating that he has a rat.
Yeah, what's that rat's name?
It's Dr. Jekyll.
Yeah.
We have Dr. Jekyll the rat, and Wendell is saying, this rat is my best friend.
Best friend? He's grown up real big and fat?
That's a check mark. If you're looking for nerd, refer to an animal that, is something that we consider to be potentially a pest
and
as your
disease
best friend.
Vector. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. As your best friend. Source of a plague. Best friend.
Best friend.
Yeah.
Plague friends.
Plague friends for life.
In this moment, Rex is like, whatever, and pulls the rat out of the cage and just lets him go.
Well, he drops him down Wendell's back to be like I'm a funny prankster. I'm gonna make him writhe around in agony from this plague rat.
So this rat, after it has climbed around through all of Wendell's clothing and his shirt and everything, and then Wendell falls and everybody's laughing
he gets tripped.
at him.
Yeah, another kid trips him. So
right.
it was like insult
that's
to injury.
Right.
Yeah, another kid trips him too.
Because they make a big point of showing this establishing shot of legs.
Yeah, just
and then
skinny
somebody's
legs.
leg just shoots right out.
Yep.
And Wendell's like,
skinny old like Doug Funny leg, like a skinny little ankle and this big clodhopper of a foot. Yeah.
So he falls over. So the rat jumps into sort of the air grate.
Right. So he's gone.
And is
Which so now at this point I didn't expect, like after seeing everything that Wendell went through, I was not expecting this to happen next.
Right. I didn't either.
Yeah.
But he gets up and he threatens Rex.
Yeah, this was like the trigger moment, man.
And his exact line is because, look, you should be nice to everybody,
right.
but, let's be honest, kids can be really shitty.
Sure.
And, if you're listening to this and you went through school in the 80s or the 90s, kids were probably shitty to you, as they were to myself and Dave.
Sure. And we were too.
And we were also shitty to other kids.
Yeah, kids are shitty.
And so kids are shitty. We're not above that. We learn from that, and we hope to be better human beings in the future.
Right.
I'm still hoping to be a better human being in the future.
Until the day we die or become
Till
Crypt
the day.
Keepers.
Exactly. And so we have Wendell that gets up, and he's hit that point where he has snapped.
Yeah.
Like, there is no more. He is not coming back from this. You just lost his best friend. You just gave his disease vector friend an out to go in, and he gets up and looks at Rex and just says, "I'm gonna make you pay." And I was like, "Ooh,
oh boy." So yeah, if this was set like 10 years later, Wendell would probably sadly come back in and lay waste to the school with an assault rifle. However, what he does in 93, he does something I didn't really expect, but it also made me feel really bad for Wendell because I went through like a similar thing. He basically tries to go straight to the weight room and thinks that by like lifting a few weights, he's eventually going to be big enough to take on this, prehistoric looking caveman creature known as Rex Rivas. So like he's in there, he's trying to lift weights, he's trying to do bench press, but he's like scrawny, he can't lift anything. So Chet and Louie find out that he's in there and they're like, dude, no, this is like, if you want to get back at Rex, there's a better way to do it. And I thought they were going to say like, use your scientific knowledge or use your brain or don't try to fight him. They're like, no, what you need is straight up fucking steroids.
Yeah.
Like they don't come out and say you need steroids. They say essentially something like a special all organic program that'll put muscles on muscles for days.
Yep.
Which is steroids. So, I mean, the cool thing about this show so far, right? Some things followed in the way that you would expect. So you would expect bullies to bully the nerd. You would expect the nerd to get upset and want to fight back some way. What you wouldn't expect is maybe for other kids to stand up and say, like, it's okay, we'll help you out. And you also wouldn't expect them to just be like, we're going to get you some steroids from my dad's health food store.
Wait, your dad owns a health food store? Yeah,
that was like the shocking moment of the episode. Not the fact that what's about to happen happened, but that his dad owned a health food store.
That was so funny to me. The idea that I guess everybody else's dad that's in this show so far either works down in a quarry or a coal mine or
of New York City
in a garage,
the famous New York City coal mines.
So you assume that all of these kids that are being such shitty bullies have dads that have like rough and tumble, serious jobs.
Sure, they're at the factory or they're probably a beat cop or something.
Yeah, right. Firefighter, EMS, and so have seen some and lived through some shit.
They work down at the 9-9. Yeah,
exactly. Damn it! And so you get all these people who you think are going to be crappy, and then Chet is just like immediately is like, oh yeah, my dad. Don't talk about this. My dad owns a health food store. Let's not be.
And then everybody's super excited about it, which is even weirder.
Yeah,
it must have been that like early 90s health food phase or something. I don't know what it was. But I love that they do this because it is kind of like a little bit of a satire here. They break in, more or less, to the health food store and they find like this dusty closet way in the back, and they go to the top shelf and dig like this old tin. And did you see when they lifted the tin up what was on the bottom of it?
It was the face of the Cryptkeeper.
Like he's had stickers, like he had like endorsements of things. So it's the face of the
franchise that shit out.
He could have, well, especially this stuff. So I mean that's fun because right there, it not only clues back into him, but it tells you like, oh shit, something supernatural and like wacky's about to happen. So basically, they take this stuff down. It's called Zen Master Chen's Old Yarrow Root Tea. If you out there can find some of this stuff, please send all of it to me because I will pay you handsomely for it.
And the reason that Dave wants it is because all of the kung fu masters use it.
Yeah, it's going to turn you into a battling beast overnight. So says Chet. So it's basically just like a tin of tea bags, right? And he's like, well, Wendell's like, oh, well, how much is it? Does this stuff really work? And Chet's like, yeah, totally. And how much money do you have? Which is like the classic, like, how much does it cost? Well, how much do you have? So Wendell hands over like $40 and Chet gives him back 3 tea bags.
Right. This line that happened when Wendell walked out of the room made me laugh.
Go ahead.
So
I love this because I couldn't figure out at first if they were just celebrating in a weird way or if they were actually going to do the thing that they said they were going to do. So go ahead.
So Chet and Louie look at each other.
So they've got Wendell's money. Wendell took off with the tea, his drugs basically.
So they look at each other and they just go, $40. Let's go squander it needlessly. Guys, I'm not a kid anymore, but I get $40. I'm gonna squander it.
Squander it needlessly. Oh, but
like
didn't you hear
crazy-
what they
like
said
crazy
after
person.
that?
What was the next thing?
Oh my God. So they say, let's squander it needlessly. And then they kind of look at each other and they jump off the steps and they just both yell, Bungee.
What?
Yeah. That's why I wrote down. I was like, Bungee? I was like, are they just yelling
What the
Bungee?
fuck?
And then spoiler alert, no, they fucking went bungee jumping with $40 off screen somewhere. Because later on in the episode, when we see them again, they're like, man, that was such a great jump. I'd totally do it again. I'm just like, holy shit, they actually went bungee jumping. Yet another thing of the 90s. So while Chet and Louie are off squandering money needlessly on bungee jumping, Wendell's taking that tea with a vengeance.
Yeah.
What was interesting here is that plays by the rules, right? That seems like something that Wendell would do. But what's interesting is that the way it all plays out eventually in the end, Wendell had a higher plan going on here. Wendell actually put some thought into this, which I thought was pretty clever.
And you think for somebody who is as smart and as conscientious of a student as Wendell, that he wouldn't be this devious. I was proved wrong.
I liked it. And I like the fact that it was just like straight up, Wendell gets this teabag stuff, and then the kids go bungee jumping, and the next thing we see, we're on the mean streets of New York in the middle of the night. You hear this like howl, like wolf howl, and it's something that scares off two kind of nasty looking dogs that are in the alley, and you're like, oh, this must be some crazy shit. And it turns out it's basically just a werewolf. So there's this werewolf stalking around. He scares off the dogs. He destroys a newspaper stand. He ruins a car driven by some weirdos who are out joyriding.
Let's talk about this car with these weirdos.
Okay, let's talk about them. Calling all babes. Calling all babes. Yeah. Ladies, does that work? Ladies?
No.
Ladies.
That does not work for women.
Calling all babes. Dude just leaning out the car window, screaming that over and over again. There's no one in sight. There's just rabid dogs and a werewolf.
Yeah, who is he hoping to attract?
A werewolf, apparently.
With screaming, calling all babes.
Ugh. These guys deserve what they got, which was nothing. They just ran away, but their car got ruined. So there's basically this werewolf running around, which is obviously, say it together.
Wendell.
Yes, Wendell, right.
Oh.
No, it's totally Wendell, right?
What were you going to say?
Nothing. No, I was going to say Wendell.
All right.
Yeah. So it's Wendell. And the funny thing is, because he wrecks like the newspaper stand, apparently that translates into front page of the newspaper, monster on the loose, monster chase. So like everybody in New York City now knows there's a monster on the loose.
And what city are we in?
We're in New York City still.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we're still in New York City. Yeah.
Great.
Full of mines and quarries. So Chet and Louie see this. At one point probably Chet and Louie see these papers, and they, to their credit, it was great. They're like, "Fuck, Wendell's a monster." It was great because when does a cartoon do that? Watch any episode, season run of Scooby-Doo. It takes them 27 minutes to figure out who the monster is, right? They were just like, fuck, Wendell's a werewolf. Which was great. So then they go to warn Rex. They're like, dude, we know you had beef with this guy. He's a werewolf now. You should probably just like apologize and squash it.
Yeah.
Well, Rex obviously thinks they're insane. And he's like, whatever, man. If he's coming at me, I'm ready for the opportunity to throw down. So Rex is looking for him, yeah.
There is so much stuff that happens in this scene where they confront Rex and tell him, A, Rex is in disbelief that Chet's dad again owns a health food store.
That's the first thing. He's like, we were at my health food store. Your dad owns a health food store?
Love it.
It's pretty great.
So there's the next moment where they say, haven't you read the front page of the newspaper? And Rex just goes, if it ain't in the sports section, I ain't reading it.
Yes.
I want to commend Rex on his commitment
to sports,
to masculinity,
to sports,
just to masculinity as a whole.
Babes.
He is going to be, once he gets his driver's license, once he
he's going to be drunken in jail.
He's gonna be an offender and should be locked away forever. But he just feels the need to just be so. He's like that guy that like, if you accidentally touched his hand when you were at like in an event
as another dude,
he'd be like,
"What, are you queer or something?"
what did you just do? And then he'd like pummel you
You just
for
snap
that.
your spine.
Yeah, to like teach you a lesson. I really felt like the more we watched Rex's character evolve over this episode, I was like, there's got to be something else going on here. Like there's got to be something in terms of just like how strong of a personality he is and what he's doing, and just sort of like what he chooses to do with his time. I was like, if this is gonna be the guy who comes out like when he gets to college, I wouldn't be surprised. I'd be happy for him, like that's fine. But
See, no, I went the complete different direction. I was like, this guy's just a straight up grade A asshole. Like, I hope that he gets what's coming to him. Which,
yeah, no doubt that he's a grade A asshole, but he's probably a grade A asshole that loves dudes. And
it's
there's nothing
possible.
wrong with that.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong
He
with
and
that.
Wendell end up together. Spoiler alert.
Oh,
So
that's kind of
sweet.
sweet.
All right, so do you have any more lines from their interaction? Because I have one that I wrote down here.
Oh no, please go.
This one just made me laugh. I don't know if they meant to have this sort of like weird. It's not really an in joke. It just made me think it was. So it's Chet and Louie talking to Rex, and they're like, Wendell, blah blah blah, he's a werewolf, and Rex doesn't listen to him. He's like, and then Chet goes, "It's about the T, Rex." And I don't know if that was like a really lame T-Rex joke. If that was like the premise for this whole fucking episode was somebody made the T-Rex joke. But I was like, oh, okay, let's just move it on. So it might have been. It might have been a really bad T-Rex joke.
I hate that.
His dad owns a health food store.
What?
My dad owns a dealership. Anyway, so let's get to the fun part. So Rex goes out more or less looking for Wendell, or he's just walking home from the basketball court because, yes, he plays basketball too. And he's just bouncing the ball, heading home through the streets of New York. And Wendell's waiting for him. But it's just Wendell. It's just not werewolf Wendell. It's just regular old Wendell. Just sitting there with his pocket protector, just hanging out. What's he have with him?
He's got some tea.
He's got a little thermos. A little thermos of tea.
Thermos full of tea.
And I love that Rex even stands there and looks at him. He's like, "Oh, you got your little potion there? You got your little magic drink? Go ahead, little crybaby. Let's drink it up." Wendy. Keeps calling him Wendy. He's prodding at him. He's poking him. He even hits him at one point. Doesn't he like knock him back into the shadows?
He's
he throws
passing a basketball to him, and he's pushing him back, and so there gets to a point where he pushes him sort of into the shadow of this dumpster,
Sure.
And all of a sudden the ball does not come out.
Yeah.
For a second, you're like, oh, and then it just comes out as like a deflated lump of plastic, and you're like, oh no, he's turned into it. And that moment, Wendell has become.
Yeah, you get to see this transformation, which was pretty cool. Right. I didn't think they were going to actually show him go through the transformation, which, I mean, it wasn't the scariest thing you'd ever seen, but it was pretty good for a cartoon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he becomes this, and then in that exact moment, Rex tries to get away.
Heck yeah.
And falls into a crack house.
Yeah, he somehow just stumbles into this rundown crack house that's like doesn't have any
flop house.
Yeah. And they're just running through. It's like this dilapidated old house, and the Wendell's kind of toying with him. He's chasing him up and down stairs, but then he's just kind of like hiding in wait for him. This is one of the moments where you actually see Rex's eyes go black, his soul escape.
Yeah.
And then he just continues to fall down the steps. It's the weird animation thing we were talking about earlier. But yeah, Wendell managed to get a hold of his shoe. He chases him down the fire escape. He swipes at his clothes, so he's all torn up. And then it chases him up the fire escape and knocks him out the window. Unfortunately, Rex survives the fall because he falls into like a pile of garbage bags. And before Wendell can get to him, he's scared off by the cops. So the cops show up. The saviors of the day. So
the cops show up and they take him into custody. They're questioning him about what's going on, and they're just like, "Okay, a monster. Let's chill out."
Everybody's seeing monsters. He like picks up the front page paper, and it says like, "Yeah, everybody's seeing monsters."
Everybody's seeing monsters.
He's like, "What is the line?" Because there's that other cop standing next to him. He's like, "My landlady's seeing monsters. My garbage man." And then the guy next to him's like, "Pizza delivery guy." He's like on the phone ordering pizza at this time.
Yeah, right. I'm drinking Monster, sponsored by Monster Energy Drink. This is crazy. There's so much stuff going on. And so they get to this point where they release him. And in this moment, Rex decides that he is going to take the law into his own hands, and he is going to fight fire with fire.
Wolf with wolf.
Monster with monster.
T with T, basically, is what he does.
Yeah.
So yeah, he heads over to Chet, and he gets the rest of this tea that he has. I love his method of preparing tea, by the way.
This is the craziest thing. He has like a kettle.
Yep. Like
He
one of
has a
those
kettle.
old fashioned like big steel. It's probably stainless steel. Could have been ceramic, whatever. But like
Yeah.
the big ones that look like a pitcher. So kettle,
Yeah.
that sucker's boiling. The water's going.
So he's just like, so he has Louis and Chet break a cube of ice trays into this carafe.
Yeah.
In order to cool it
He's like,
down,
cool it
because
down.
he's putting all the
All of
tea into it, and he's like, look, if Wendell got strong off of like one tea bag, he's like, and I'm taking 5, I'm gonna be 5 times stronger than he
He
is.
did math.
I'm like, and that's not great math though.
It's not great.
Like,
It's
that's
probably a real
never-
bad idea
It's really terrible.
to do this
math.
amount of drugs
Yeah.
in the manner that you're
Um,
taking it, which is really strange.
It's so, he does this.
Yeah.
And he sort of hulks out.
Yeah, Chet and Louie book it. They're gone.
Oof, they are out of Chet's father's health food store.
He owns a health food store?
He does.
That's so cool.
So they book it out, and in the process of doing it, Rex now, like Wolf Rex,
And he looks badass, I gotta say. Like that
Yeah,
is like this is like more like a werewolf that you expect to see. He's got kind of like
Yeah.
the bigger, broader chest and shoulders, the long fangs, the red eyes, all kinds of good stuff. Yeah.
he's not like that wussy werewolf
Yeah.
Wendell.
Wendy the
that was
werewolf over here.
When Wendy the werewolf, he was real fucking macho.
It's like real tough, like I'd only read the sports section kind of werewolf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he'd be like the dad werewolf that'd be like, I don't want to fucking come to your game because I gotta go drinking at the bar.
Gotta go
Kind of a
I gotta go
werewolf.
slam these werebabes. Slam it to
Hey,
'em.
I gotta hang out of a window and howl at women and just be like, calling all werebabes, where you at?
That's right. Where you at, babes? I lost it on that. I couldn't do it. But yeah, that kind of guy. That kind of werewolf. You know the one, ladies. You've
Yeah,
seen him
come on.
around town.
You've met
You
him at
know this
clubs.
alpha wolf.
Chill. So we have this moment where he's hulking out. He breaks out of this health food store that Chet's dad owns, and exactly, I know Chet's dad owns a health food store. So he breaks out into the street, and in this moment, the cops show up, and it is hilarious because this was like one of my favorite interactions of like the entire episode because it was so funny. Because immediately they pull out like somebody with like a trank gun, and they're like, trank him.
He's like, get the tranks. Yeah, they were ready for this fucking wolf.
One fucking shot and he is down.
Well, so here's the thing. And this unfortunately, I don't want to bring the show down. We'll definitely pick it back up. But they say trank him. They shoot him with the trank. He just kind of like looks at him and he doesn't go down. So there's a shot where they actually go to one of the cops and he starts to pull his sidearm. And another
Yeah.
cop next to him like puts his hand on the other cop's hand and puts it back down. He's like, no, we're not going to shoot him. And I had to pause it and like I almost lost my fucking mind because right now, unfortunately, as Sean and I are recording this, we're coming off of like 2 back-to-back cop on black people shootings and basically executions at this point. And there's probably going to be more by the time this episode comes out, unfortunately. But I had to write down in my notes, literally even the cops in this cartoon show more restraint when faced with a fucking werewolf than cops in America. And I know that doesn't stand for all cops, but it is a problem that we have here. And just the fact that this showed up on this cartoon show of all things at this particular time, I was just like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. But
Yeah.
bravo to you cartoon cops for not shooting that werewolf just because he was a werewolf. Well done.
Yeah.
All right. So that aside, the trank does take this werewolf down, right? So they can take him into custody.
Right.
And then presumably once the super T power wears off, the dude's just going to turn back into Rex.
Right.
So Chet and Louie, brilliant Sherlock Holmesian mystery solvers that they are like, holy shit, man, I bet Wendell like fucking planned this from the beginning, man. Whoa.
And if he did, kudos to him.
Yeah, good
'cause
job,
that
Wendell.
is playing the long game.
Yeah. He's like, I'm only going to take 1 tea bag at a time. I'm going to be Wendy the werewolf. And then Rex is probably going to freak out and get arrested by the cops. Like, it's kind of convoluted, but hey, man, it worked out.
Yeah, it worked out to his advantage. So kudos to him for being able to play the game and, get his friend arrested.
Get arrested and put away for life as a murder monster. I mean, that's a pretty good game, man. Pretty good game. So Rex may get to discover his true self in prison now. We'll never know. But it did work out pretty well for Wendell. Everybody kind of like respected that he stood up to Rex but they also kind of kept their distance. Like if they would start to make fun of him, he just kind of looked at him and go woof, and they'd kind of run away. And then
I want to pause
let's
for
pause.
a moment. So I don't know that in our lexicon of sexual understanding, that back in the 90s we understood what woofing at somebody meant.
Okay. I just took this as like he was like reminding them that he was a dog monster creature.
Sure, he did. But as somebody who has been woofed at by another man, it for like 2 seconds I was like, well, that was off-putting.
Wait, hold on. What's it mean when a dude woofs at another dude?
It just means that like they're interested. It means that it could be potentially like in the gay community, it could mean that it's like a bear.
Oh, that's weird. Because
that's like
when I would
indicating or woofing. I was seeing Avenue Q in DC with some friends who happened to be gay, and I was standing outside the theater with them talking about the show post show, and somebody woofed at me, and I had no idea what it was, and then my friends were just like, "You were just woofed at by that dude," and I was like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Like I don't.
I would have no context.
Yeah, I had zero, and I sat there looking at it, and so in this moment, I guess as an adult, for him to just look at somebody and just go, "Woof," I was like, "Oh no."
See, no, I took it as like I took it the other direction. So like if a guy looks at a girl, or I guess anybody could do this to anybody, and just goes like, "Woof," like that's almost like a reaction, like, "God, you are ugly," like that. That's what I remembered from back in the day, like in movies and stuff like that. Just like if somebody would go,
okay,
"Woof," but I guess it's just like the context. Because it's sort of like, you are so ugly that you have taken my breath away and made me make this sound involuntarily. But no, so these are 3 very different instances I think we've got here. All of them are terrible, but I think Wendell's is probably the least harmful, because he just woofed at him like a dog to remind him that he was once a werewolf. We're learning a lot. Social interactions on Saturday morning cartoons.
Oh, man.
It's good times.
But then
you'll learn something.
This is a really positive moment, because Dr. Jekyll is back in his locker.
Welcome back, Dr. Jekyll, and possibly Wendell, Mr. Hyde. Yeah.
And so, disease vector friend is back, and happy to be there.
And I love the closing shot that Wendell, like in his locker, still has the thermos, so he may still have one tea bag left in case he ever needs it, which I thought was kind of cool. It was an unnecessary thing, but it was a nice little addition. So I thought that was pretty neat.
Okay.
So that's the end of that episode, but it's not the way we close the episode out. So we got to go back to Cryptkeeper, right?
Right.
What's he been up to this whole time?
He's been continuing to work out, understanding a little bit about Shakeology.
Yeah, he's getting into the Shakeology a little bit. Maybe
if anybody's ever done P90X.
I'm currently doing that again, but not doing Shakeology because I don't want to grow massive amounts of blonde curls from every part of my body.
I will say this is the only dad joke that I will say about Rex, where Cryptkeeper just goes, "Tea bag about old Rex," as in indicate like too bad about
tea bag about old Rex.
Oh my god, I cringe laughed at that line.
That's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. But yeah, so like he's been taking some shakes or whatever for like his health tonics, and he's like pretending to read the instructions, right?
They'll put scare on your chest.
Oh, God. It's so bad. Sean's got them all written down. Sean's going to use these in a few years, I'm sure. But he's like, oh, I guess I should have read the instructions. And it literally just blonde flowing curls just start sprouting from like every inch of him. And that's kind of how they close the episode. So it was kind of silly. Unfortunately, we're not going to have time to touch on the second episode for tonight. But Sean, is there anything you wanted to mention from it? Anything that stuck out? Anything made it worth watching for people?
I will say that the one major difference was so this episode that we watched, Hide and Go Shriek, was in season 1. Right. The second episode that we watched that we're really not going to get a chance to talk too much about is called Growing Pains, and it's in season 2. Right. And again, it follows the exploits of Wendell. And I will say that this was sort of an interesting episode because he sort of finds a lady love.
It was so sweet. And it took me back to like kind of high school romance, but like one that actually worked out the way you wanted it to. It was actually really sweet. Except for the end, which was weird, but it all worked out well for Wendell to begin with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it worked out for the best for him.
Yeah.
I want to say for us, we'd be like, I don't know what this is.
No,
I'm gonna burn it with fire.
totally fine. Totally fine with it.
Oh, you'd be totally fine?
Yeah, I'm totally fine.
Fair.
As long as I never pissed her off, which would probably happen. Yeah, so I don't know. I might have to rethink that.
So we had a lot of interesting things. The major difference for me was that the intro and the outro for each episode that's with the Cryptkeeper is now also introducing an additional character, which is a witch.
Which is not just any old witch, but
witch
the
is not just...
old witch. She literally announces herself as the old witch.
Yep.
So that's a thing they decided to add, which is a little strange.
Yeah.
It's just this weird framing story about like there's the old witch and another character who are like trying to take over the Cryptkeeper's spot of narration because they want a show of their own, which is like, okay, why? I don't, whatever. And it's just kind of silly. There's nothing super. Oh, the only thing interesting is that her eyes also go over black too, but it's because I think she has like black eyeshadow on the back of her eyes, but just weird. But that one, I'd say watch that one. It's a very sweet. You get to see Wendell kind of grown up a little bit. Chet and Louie are still around, still being jerks. But if you liked Wendell from that first episode, you get to see him again here.
It also felt like between season 1 and 2 that they spent a little bit more time on sort of the budget and some of these backgrounds.
Yeah, and the animation's a lot more detailed and it looks a lot better. Correct. It's a lot more cleaned up. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's interesting.
Looks good, but hey, that's just our opinion. How would you like to read some other opinions out there, buddy?
Let's get back into this.
Man, we haven't done this in a while.
This has been a segment that we've missed, and so we're bringing it back.
All right. What you got? You want to take this first one?
Yeah.
How many stars is that? I think it's 10.
This is like 10?
It's 10.
So this is a 10 out of
probably 10?
100.
Oh, 100.
Probably 100.
100, yeah.
This is 10 out of 10. This is from somebody back in 2007. Title is, I loved this back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked this show when I was a kid, so now when I watch it, the nostalgia automatically makes me love it. It probably isn't too good if you don't watch it as a kid, but it is still a very good show. Not too scary, but T-O, not T-O-O. Not too scary, but since it was a kid's show, you can't expect much. Definitely worth a watch if you saw this show as a kid, or just like the original. I guess the original being the HBO series. If you remember correctly, the original voice of the Cryptkeeper does the voice for the animated show as well. As much as I love this show, I'll admit it was not as great as the original because of obvious reasons. But for a kid's show, it was damn good, smiley face emoji. This person really seemed to have a hard time differentiating
reality from
fiction show behind the actual HBO show that was on, intended for adults.
Poor 9Sam1. I worry about you every day, but I hope you're doing fine. We've also got a second opinion here from Op Prime, or possibly OP Prime. This is from back in 2000. A review titled simply, Thinking, ... Think. Okay, now granted, this is called Tales from the Cryptkeeper, the animated series, and their message is as follows. Think, Tales from the Crypt, animated. You sold me, OP Prime. This series was a Saturday morning cartoon and aired in ABC. Being on ABC and on Saturday morning kept the show from living up to the live-action show. It wasn't able to be as scary or funny with those restrictions. On its own, I'd say it was an okay show, but compared to the live-action show, it does not measure up. So OP Prime, not a big fan. 9Sam1, very confused, but 10 out of 10 stars. Sean, what's your reaction for Tales from the Cryptkeeper, which you can think of as Tales from the Crypt animated?
I would say for Tales from the Cryptkeeper, I would say it's if you watched the original and you enjoyed it, if you watched the original HBO series and you enjoyed it, and you'd like to kind of delve into this a little bit more and check it out, I'd say it's worth a watch. Sure. It's not something that is, it's not bad. I would say it's very middle of the road in terms of what you are going to come into with your expectations. I will say though that this show is not bad enough to get the dip.
No dip tonight. I think that's
no dip.
0 for 2 for the dip. No dip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts,
so
Dave?
I would say I would recommend it as well. And actually, as we were talking about it, I was thinking of the other kids' kind of horror anthology, Goosebumps. Now that was a live action, based off of the R.L. Stine books, but there was a live action half-hour series that I think was Saturday morning cartoons. Similar to that. So like if you watch that or if you watch it with your kids, Tales from the Crypt Keeper is kind of similar. So you can use that as kind of a barometer to measure whether or not you want to, watch this with your kids or just watch it by yourself like we did. So yeah, it's definitely not getting the dip. I'd say check this one out, whether you're familiar with the live action show or not. But yeah,
Cool.
so that's it. Tales from the Crypt Keeper. 3 out of 4 CBS Saturday morning cartoons done. We got one left. We'll tell you what that is coming up. But first, Sean, buddy, what do you have coming up the next couple of weeks?
For the next couple of weeks, I am doing a lot of shows in Washington, D.C. We're doing some live improv comedy. You can check me out, as always, witdc.org. I'll be performing every Saturday night for the next couple weekends. It's always 7:30, and it's pretty much throughout the entire rest of July, and then into the first week of August. I'll be performing with Nox. That's NOX exclamation point. And as always, like I mentioned, you can find out more information witdc.org. I have an improv festival that is coming up at the very end of the year. So if you are in the tri-state area, the Virginia, Baltimore, DC geographic location, and you are interested in coming to see live comedy, we have some awesome headliner from Chicago as well as also LA. It's going to be 4 days of a lot of really fun improv from across the country, and we will be finalizing the schedule within the next month. Could not be more excited for this, so I'm really pumped to have this take off. And as always, you can find me on Twitter and the Instagrams at Sean Paul Ellis.
Fantastic. We will have all of Sean's scheduling information, contact information up on our website, so you can check that out. You don't have to write down a single fucking thing.
And now, Dave, what are you up to, buddy?
Just up to the same old stuff. You can find me over at collider.com and nerdist.com, where I'm a science freelance writer. If you're interested in some of my short fiction, you can head on over to davetrumbore.com and scope that out. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can do so at drclawmd. If you want to find out more about the show, please check out our website, SaturdayMorningCartoons.com. Remember, it's morning with a U. On Twitter, you can find us at MorningTunes. Check out Sean's brandy new handiwork on our Instagram page. He's been doing some fun stuff over there. He's having a good time with it. I think he really enjoys it. You guys have been fantastic on our Facebook page, so please keep that up. Keep the comments coming. We love talking with you. I posted something from Pokemon the other day, and somebody reminded us that we need to watch Card Captors.
Ooh.
Card Captors. It's one that escaped us the last time around, so we'll put that back on the list.
Nice.
We've also got our YouTube page where these podcast episodes go up each and every week, and if you prefer the audio-only version, it's a free listen each and every week through iTunes and Stitcher. If you'd like to send us a note or suggest a cartoon for a future episode, please send us an email, SaturdayMorningCartoons@gmail.com. That'll do it for 75% of Saturday Morning Cartoons CBS block. Sean, what you got, buddy?
Just want to give a quick shout out to listener Lauren Taylor for saying that we should have gotten more into the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles theme song with Chuck Lorre. You are 100% correct.
100% correct.
There's some really good information that's out there about Chuck Lorre writing the theme song. You can Google that, and we can also put a link up on our site for people to check out.
Yeah, we'll go back and
read a little bit more.
we'll go back and update the site. We'll probably put a link up on the Facebook page too as well. Just like tag that with it because that was pretty cool little side. Thanks to Lauren for bringing that to our attention. We did not catch that one, so appreciate it.
Yes,
and we appreciate when you guys do reach out to us and just yell at us, tell us kindly that we missed stuff, or suggest that we do something different in the future. We love it. We just love having the conversation with you guys because otherwise it's just me and Sean talking to each other like we've done for 10 plus years. So what's the fun in that? But we're gonna bring another fellow into the what? We're going to bring another voice into the fray to close out the CBS Saturday Morning Cartoons block. It's going to be an interesting one. You want to tease the listeners out there?
Sure. We are bringing back Evan Valentine.
Yeah, buddy.
And he is going to talk a little bit about Wildcats. Oh, boy.
If you liked X-Men or any Justice League.
On Werewolf Tea.
On Werewolf Tea.
On Werewolf Tea steroids.
If you like normal superheroes on Werewolf steroid tea, you're going to love Wildcats.
And if you love somebody screaming at you, you'll turn in.
You'll love Evan
somebody
Valentine.
Screaming. You love somebody screaming at you. Tune in for Evan Valentine next week.
I have a feeling that Evan is going to channel his Batman vs. Superman rage into Wildcats, and my microphone's just going to explode. So it's going to be a good time. It's going to be a lot of fun. Wildcats.
Oh, boy.
Well, this has been Saturday Morning Cartoons. Thank you guys so much for listening. We will see you next time.
Hey, everybody. Thanks a lot for listening to Saturday Morning Cartoons. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to transform and roll out.